Hello. In today's video, we're going to talk about concussions and the complexity that is a concussion. Saying it's just a concussion does a disservice to the injury that you sustained. I'm Chelsea Brown, physical therapist and founder at Reboot Concussion Recovery. In this video, we're going to dive deeper into why we're moving away from severity classifications for concussion, mild, moderate, severe, and more into classifying based on subtype or primary symptom driver that a person experiences from their concussion. We're going to talk about the 7 different pillars or domains of a concussion and how they can present in an individual. The purpose of this video is to describe these pillars or subtypes of concussion, explain what a person might be experiencing if they have that subtype, and then help guide you to the right practitioner. Note that you might feel like multiple subtypes or domains hit home for you. They explain how you've been feeling. That is normal. There is a complex, intertwined nature of these domains that will be present in a concussion. You are not going to be in one singular bucket. That could be 2 buckets, could be 4 buckets. Everybody is going to be a little bit different, and that's why everybody's concussion recovery is so different and should be personalized to them. The first domain we're going to talk about is the one that's most commonly associated with a concussion, and that is the cervical domain or the neck. The neck is related to whiplash. So that is because of the forces that go through the neck, head and neck when you sustain a concussion that will strain the muscles, ligaments, tendons of the neck. You're going to have injury to that area, and that usually leads to things like headaches or dizziness. We often refer to that as cervicogenic headaches or cervicogenic dizziness because it is dizziness or headaches that are triggered by either the head's position or movement of your head and neck. Treatment for the cervical domain is what you would think about of traditional cervical interventions, physical therapy, addressing deep neck flexor strengthening or postural strength, so strength of your head and neck that's going to help support your head. And then what is called proprioception or awareness to where your head is in space. So doing exercises to retrain your understanding as to where your head is, and so you can have better tolerance to movement and your head moving through space. Moving on from the cervical domain, we're going to go into the vestibular domain or your balance center and awareness to where you are in space. Note that there are 2 different pieces to your vestibular system. We have our peripheral vestibular system, which is your inner ear, and our central vestibular system, which is your brainstem and cerebellum, kind of that back part of your brain. We're going to talk more about the peripheral vestibular system first, because if peripheral deficits are present, this is one of the first things that you want to get addressed, as it is such a low-hanging fruit. We can make you feel better pretty quickly. So that peripheral vestibular system is talking about BPPV or vertigo, and that is caused by the calcium crystals or the otoconia in your inner ear getting dislodged during a concussion. And what happens when they become dislodged is you have that positional dizziness. This dizziness that lasts less than 60 seconds when you roll over in bed, first stand up, change positions. Most of the time people will say, oh, it only happens when I change positions or get up really quickly. If that's happening, it's something that we can address really easily, and you want to go see a provider that does a canalysis repositioning maneuver such as the Epley. Moving on to the central vestibular deficits, this is going to be more of your constant dizziness. So this is dizziness or motion intolerance. It's driving, walking, moving quickly, turning your head, those sort of things where you feel like there's a little bit of a lag, not that room spinning sensation that only happens when you change positions. Once your peripheral vestibular deficits have been resolved, you'll move into addressing the central vestibular deficits. So that's recalibrating your parking sensor and your GPS. That is going to be done with a vestibular physical therapist. They will be working on balance, spatial orientation, proprioception, again, retraining your body's understanding to where you are in space. Please note that vestibular therapy should provoke some symptoms, but it should be just the right amount, kind of that Goldilocks dosage. We want to make sure that we poke the bear a little bit and then have symptom recovery before we do the next exercise. If you're finding that you go to your vestibular therapist and afterwards you have symptoms for the rest of the day leading into the next day, you're probably doing too much. Make sure you're communicating that with your vestibular therapist so you can dial back and find the right amount a provocation for you. The next domain we're going to talk about is the visual or oculomotor domain. Symptoms commonly associated with the visual domain are going to be eye strain and visual fatigue with close work, computer tasks, reading, things like that. Often people will complain about blurry vision or even sometimes double vision. A common misconception about blurry vision following a concussion is that people need glasses or they need to change their prescription. That is not usually true. Our acuity, or our ability to see 20/20, is only 20% of how we visually process the world. The other 80% comes from the muscles and nerves and the visual pathways that control our eyes, and that is what is impaired following a concussion. So the reason why you see blurry vision or have blurry vision following a concussion is that your eyes aren't quite teaming together. They're not quite looking at the exact same thing, and those two visual inputs that you get at the back of the brain that should mesh perfectly are slightly off. And therefore it looks blurry, but it's really actually just slight double vision. And that is why new glasses likely won't help you. So how do we address these visual deficits? That is going to be through vision therapy. Vision therapy can be done by a trained physical therapist or an occupational therapist under the direction of an eye doctor. Typically, these deficits aren't going to be assessed by your normal eye doctor. You'll go in looking for a new prescription, they'll tell you everything is fine, you wonder why you still have blurry vision. They're mostly looking at your acuity and your eye health. You may have to look into a neuro-optometrist who is going to assess more of the muscles and nerves and those motor pathways of your eyes. They will look at accommodation and divergences, so again, how your eyes work together. And there are special lenses that can be prescribed if there is a significant deficit. Note that this is not usually the first line of defense for visual deficits. Our first line of defense is usually going to be the vision therapy. If someone has a significant accommodation deficit, that's when we will refer to the neuro-optometrist for prism lenses. But it's kind of like putting somebody in a brace or on crutches. It's only a temporary fix. It's not something that will be permanent. So we don't want to go right to those lenses if they are not necessary. Up next is our motor domain or our coordination. This is a relatively new domain or subtype of concussion that we've started to integrate over the last 8 years or so. What we've started to realize is that there is this disconnect in the mind-body connection and some reemergence of primitive reflexes. Symptoms of this domain commonly include feeling unsteady on your feet, lack of coordination, so you go to reach for something and you miss it, or you're dropping objects, or even if you are doing a little bit of exercise, you just feel really uncoordinated with movements that used to be very simple for you. Treatment for this domain is through mind-body or brain-body integrative exercises. So these brain-body or mind-body exercises are working on the disassociation of movement. So what we would see in a primitive reflex is in order for a baby, an infant, to lift their arms and legs, they have to initiate that with their head because they don't have the strength. With these mind-body exercises, we're working on that disassociation, being able to lift our extremities without needing the head movements. Similarly, we're working on the disassociation from upper and lower extremities or cross-body movement. So sometimes it would be your right arm doing something while your right leg is doing something different, or your right arm and your left leg are doing the same thing, that sort of cross-body exercise. What's really nice about these exercises is that they're a great 2-for-1. What I mean by that is a lot of them are core or postural-based exercises. So they go back to that cervical domain and addressing postural stability. We can use these exercises both for treating the motor domain and treating the cervical domain, so you're not doing too much exercise or too much therapy. The next 3 domains are thought to be caused due to the metabolic crisis in the brain. What this means is that there's an imbalance in energy demands and energy supply. So following a concussion, the energy demands go up, but there's a decrease in cerebral blood flow, and therefore the supply of energy goes down. So bottom line in the metabolic crisis is that your brain needs energy to heal, but the supply is just not there. So if you do too much, it typically makes your symptoms worse. We're going to move into the autonomic domain, and this is your body's autopilot. It works 24/7, 365, in the background, something you're never thinking about. The autonomic nervous system controls things like blood pressure, heart rate, temperature regulation, sleep cycles, things like that. The autonomic nervous system also has two branches, our sympathetic branch, our fight or flight, and our parasympathetic branch, rest and digest. What we'll see following a concussion is the overactive sympathetic branch. People will commonly say, I feel like I'm stuck in fight or flight. I'm always on high alert. Because the sympathetic side of the nervous system is winning the tug of war, you're heavily running towards that fight or flight side, you're going to see symptoms of increased heart rate, headaches, lightheadedness, and then impairments in things that should be a little bit more parasympathetic driven. So impaired sleep, impaired GI system. Treatment for the autonomic nervous system is about restoring that balance and restoring that tug of war between sympathetic and parasympathetic states. Training your body that it is safe again. The threat is no longer present. We can restore that balance through very specific graded exercise program that meets your body where it's currently at versus overtaxing the system, and implementing parasympathetic drive through breathing activities and various regulation. If you're looking for more details on the autonomic domain, check out my playlist on my YouTube channel on the autonomic nervous system. Next up is the cognitive domain. Oftentimes, following a concussion, people will have complaints of impaired memory, decreased executive functioning, and just overall slower processing. Oftentimes, we'll see cognitive deficits due to impaired sensory processing, so impairments of the visual and vestibular system. What's happening is you used to be on fiber optic internet, and now you're processing at dial-up speeds. The information coming in isn't coming in at the speed that it used to be, so the brain is having a slower time processing, storing, or retrieving information, presenting with difficulties in word finding, executive functioning, multitasking, and they outwardly look like cognitive deficits, but it's likely due to that processing error. Usually if we fix those vision and vestibular deficits, the cognitive deficits will improve. If they don't, that's where we can go to speech therapy to help address those cognitive deficits. The final domain we're going to talk about is mood. I honestly find this one to be the most challenging. It's really hard to pinpoint the feeling that people experience. A lot of times patients will explain to me that they just don't feel like themselves. They feel like they lost a piece of them. It can be increased anxiety. It can be feeling more on edge or more irritable, getting angry when they didn't used to be like that. They feel short-fused. I've also had patients explain feeling sad or feeling disengaged or disassociated, kind of feeling like they're out of their body. They're just experiencing the world from the outside, not really living it anymore. Some things that can really help in this realm is speaking to those close to you, trying to explain to them how you feel and what would feel most supportive for you during this time. It also can be really helpful to get a mental health provider on board just to help you navigate these difficult times as things are changing. And right now, your world does look different than it did prior to your injury. Know that it can be really helpful to pace interactions. So social interactions can be taxing on the body, just like cognitive tasks can be taxing. So making sure that you're acknowledging your social battery and removing yourself from situations when you need a break or you're feeling overwhelmed. Know that it's okay to be frustrated or upset or angry and not know why you're feeling that way. That is normal. Sometimes it's really hard to pinpoint, and just letting yourself be and feel those emotions without trying to understand why you're feeling that can be really helpful and supportive here. Journaling can be a great thing to implement when you're feeling these feelings and you're not really knowing why you're feeling them. You can kind of write it out, put pen to paper, and see if something comes to you. But then again, it's getting it out of your body and an outlet that might be supportive for you. So that wraps up our 7 domains or pillars of concussion. Now, remember, it's really important to know that there is an interplay of all of these domains. So seeing a provider that treats in a single silo may miss some of the other things that are affecting your treatment or recovery. For example, if you have a vestibular domain and you're very motion sick, car rides are challenging, that can trigger your autonomic nervous system, upticking that fight or flight response and leading to increased anxiety in that mood domain. So all of those systems play on one another and can contribute to the symptoms that you are experiencing. If you need help diving deeper into your own concussion and your own recovery, use the link in the bio to schedule a connection call so we can help guide your treatment and find the right providers for you. Thank you for watching today's video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel as our future videos will dive deeper into each subtype of concussion.